Hello, my name's Alicia and welcome to my garden. This is my dog Lucky. Right now he's very concerned that my children are out of his sight, but I think he'll be okay. Um, he is just 2 years old now, and I think he may be getting to the point where he can hang out in my garden without destroying things, so we're giving it a test run. Um, so I published a video recently about planting onions, and I said real quick explanation. I rewatched it and I'm like, that wasn't a great explanation for anybody that needs much detail. It was more just me throwing onions in the ground because I wanted to get them in the ground before it rained. So this one's going to be a little more comprehensive. I'm going to sit and chat a little bit more. I really wanted to be drinking my coffee, but Lucky just dumped it. So I plant my onions. Now I start my onions from seed. I decided a few years ago that it was just much more efficient for me to buy seeds and start my own than to purchase from some of the sources that I'm comfortable purchasing from. Maine Potato Lady is who I've purchased from in the past. Really good results from their products. But I've just decided I have the setup to be able to start things. I have grow lights and I love having things growing in my house. So I've been starting my own seeds. There is a video up. I'll try to remember to link it below. So I plant my onion seeds pretty thick. Here is a pot of some onions that desperately need to get into the ground. And then I also use salad containers. There's 2 layers here. The inside layer, you're okay, sir. The inside layer has some holes slit in it so that it allows water up into it, and then I just put water into the outside layer. So I've got that one and this one. I've got a lot of onions to plant this year. You're okay, buddy. The girls are right where you can see them. There we go. So if you are not to that point or haven't decided to start your own onions plants, that's fine. You have 2 options when you go to purchase onions, to either buy sets or starts. Onion sets look like a tiny onion. It looks dried, like it looks like something you could possibly cook with, except for it's really small. Starts are plants that have been started in the current year. An onion is a biennial, so it will grow for 2 years. In the second year, it produces seed, typically, from what I understand. So a set is one that's it's in its second year. So they don't, from my understanding, they don't store as well because they've completed their second year, and so they've completed their life cycle. They're not wanting to hang around for their second season. Whereas if you start with live plants with starts, then they store better because they haven't completed that second year. So now, if you're just wanting something easy, buddy, if you're just wanting something that you can get in the ground, you can have something green grown in the garden, and you're just going to harvest and cook with them, sets are perfectly fine. Probably there's people that have had good luck storing sets as well. So this isn't one of those like you must do it this way. This is how I choose to do it. So onions cannot handle many weeds at all, so you need to put them in a space that's very, you're able to keep well weeded. Now I have raised beds, not raised beds that you see where you have like a built structure in the soil and is, filled that structure. I just take my topsoil from where I'm going to be walking or around the edge of the bed and flip it into the bed, and that elevates it somewhat. That's the way I've always done my raised beds because purchasing soil can get expensive, and so we just try to use the resources we have here along with compost that we make with our chickens. Hi, buddy. Ducky, sir, come here. Come here, Buffy. You gonna sit? Oh, Dad's a good boy. You gonna sit right here. Keep track of things. So the methods we use are no-till. I typically keep my garden well mulched, and when I'm ready to plant, I'll remove enough of the mulch that I can get to the soil. All right, so I use no-till methods for my gardening. I've prepared my soil lots of ways. I'm gotten to the point where no-till seems like the best option for me through my research and just experience. I feel like I'm getting really good results by not turning or tilling my soil. So typically, if I'm going to plant seeds, or even with these onions, it does make this a little easier. I just use this garden weasel to lightly turn the soil. So I'm going to do just a couple passes back and forth. It also kind of gives me a guide for a row. I plant my onions. Stay here, sir. Stay here, sir. We're going to not walk through the garden beds. I know. So I'm going to plant my onions probably about that far apart, which I think is about 4 or 5 inches. And I do my rows about 8 inches apart. Now, there's some leaf mulch in my garden bed right now. You'll also see some stalks. I typically just cut my plants off and allow the roots to break down in the soil. This one just kind of came out when I ran the garden weasel over it. So plants about, I would say, somewhere between 4 and 6 inches apart, rows around 6-8 inches apart. There's some, like I said, there's some mulch down right now. As our yard gets to growing, we collect our grass clippings, and I mulch with the grass clippings. That does many things. It encourages your worms, your earthworms, to come up, aerate your soil, fertilize your soil. It keeps moisture in, and it keeps your weeds down. A lot of people tell me that gardens are too much work, and provided I love it, and this is kind of my refuge, if you will. But if you want a garden that's not as much work, mulch is the solution. If you keep things mulched, you don't get the weeds, and then you don't feel like you're out in your garden all the time pulling many, many, many weeds. Okay, so I think I might put this guy inside the fence because, well, we'll see. We'll see if he's ready to sit down. I'm going to turn the camera around. I'm going to show you what I already have planted. We're going to pop these out of the pot, start taking them apart and getting them in the soil and ready to roll. I'm so excited. Sorry, buddy. Onions are one of those things, like so many of my recipes. The first thing I'm doing is chopping up an onion and sauteing it in some butter or olive oil. So if I have onions out of my garden, I have the base or the beginning of so many meals. So I plant a lot of onions. I tuck them just about everywhere. And it's kind of my goal this year or soon to grow enough onions that we don't have to purchase any, that we're able to make it the entire year until onions start coming out of the garden in the spring without purchasing any. So that's one of my goals. So here is our space in between, and then our space in between our rows is probably around 8, yeah, that might be 8 or 10 inches. There are some gardeners that, lay out the string and make sure that rows are perfectly, that your rows are perfectly straight. I am not one of those gardeners. It is not in my wheelhouse. If my husband was down here, they would be much straighter and much more precise, but that is not how I roll. So we're gonna get some more of these in the ground, although we're struggling staying out of the garden bed. So he's gonna go back in the fence for right now. Sorry, buddy. And we're gonna get some onions in the ground. Here is our pot of onion plants. just going to gently squeeze this to get loosened. Now these roots are absolutely crazy. I would like to have had these out, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, but weather and other things just didn't work for that. So if you happen to have started your plants this way, just going to kind of gently wiggle everything apart here. These roots are pretty strong. And as you get everything loosened, there we go. Look at that beautiful onion there. Okay, so let's get this one in the ground. I'm going to dig a hole big enough to get all of these roots down in, pointing down into the soil, and then just fill the hole back in. Get those roots all down in there. Fill the hole and give it a little press. Alright, so I'm beginning to realize with the amount of onions that I have started, I can't just put them in rows, or, well, I could. I would take up more space than I want to. I have in the past planted them in like clumps of 3. So I'm going to start, as I take these apart, I'm putting them in this bed here. I'm going to start, let's see, get a clump out here. So I'm going to start getting 2 or 3 together, and I'm going to plant them in one space. So we're going to take that clump, kind of those beautiful roots there, make a spot, get all the roots pointing in the right direction. I think I'm going to try that again. Couldn't quite get that a little deeper, I think. There we go. So group of 3 there. And we're going to do 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to go probably about that far back towards the fence here. So about there. Another group of 3. And I'm going to do that throughout this bed. I've got a timer going off in about 11 minutes. I need to go take the lid off a loaf of sourdough bread that's in the oven. So a nice group of 3 there. Oops. And that was, yeah, so that one was definitely not in as deep as it needed to be. Let's go ahead and give that a try again. definitely not the perfect gardener. Okay. So, did I have, yeah, I had another group of 3. We'll see how this works. Actually, let's see, I think I can probably do another right there. There we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 15 onions in the space that I only may have had 5 or 6 otherwise. We'll give that a shot. This is some pretty good soil over here, and I think this might work just fine. So this right here, in my mind, is the absolute beauty of no-till in raised beds. So you don't have to have the whole garden prepared to get started. When you do have the garden deep mulched, like I'm literally like absolutely no tools, brushing the leaves away. The soil is soft enough to just make a hole with my hand. I could just be using a little garden trowel, and I'm popping the onions in the ground. So, you know, when you have a little chunk of time, you don't have to have a big garden space prepared. You don't have to have it tilled. You don't have to do a ton of work to get space ready. You just brush the mulch to the side. Now, is there some work up front? Yes. You know, you have to get things set up. But once you have a garden space set up like this, coming out and spending a little bit of time and getting some onions in the ground, again, with minimal tools, is doable. So right now, this is taking me up right here in this space. I have about 100 onions planted. Again, I don't know how many we truly need to make it through. A second, let's see. I'm not 100% sure how many onions it would take to get us through a full year. And if our children weren't such fussy eaters, and ate things with onions in them, it would certainly change the number.
You talking to yourself again?
I am talking to myself again.
Good
And
for
I'm a very good listener. What do you think's the number? Here, let me get you on camera. What do you think is the number of onions that we would need to make it through without having to buy any?
Minimum 300.
Minimum 300. So what you're saying is the garden needs to be bigger.
No. Yeah, not what I'm saying.
All right, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 times 15.
I'm gonna bring my abacus.
80,
40, 120.
Yeah. So there's 120. We're probably...
And all of them are 3, right?
approximately.
Uh-huh.
Oh, wait a minute.
Oh no.
This one needs a home. Hang on.
I was worried.
I know you were worried. I could sense it. All right. It's very bright.
Uh-huh.
We're both a little sunburned.
Hey, Toots, stop cutting off the top of my head.
So, okay, just a second. Why is that? I don't know. Seems weird. There we go. How's that?
Better.
Better. So you said minimum 300?
Yes.
All right. So I think we're about 220.
Look at that.
So
2/3 of the way there.
2/3 of the way there.
You have a whole
And
other container.
Pretty sure. Just a second. I'm fairly certain. You gonna hold that?
Maybe.
I don't know. Do you think there's at least 100 in there?
By your tomato math? No, there's clearly only 6.
There's 6. Well, you have trouble understanding the numbers.
I do.
All right.
I'm just here for the looks.
You are. You look great, baby. You don't have any dirt on your face or anything.
My hair's not frizzy.
Hair's not frizzy, not
Nope.
sunburnt,
Don't smell like smoke.
don't smell like smoke and other stinky things.
I was doing boy things.
Boy things. Chainsaws.
Getting poison ivy in places.
Right now, good.
Oh.
I'll take this. I'm going to finish up here soon, I swear.
You worn out?
The German Shepherd has been very busy keeping track of everyone. And I think she's beginning to realize she's exhausted. The question is, do I finish up now, get myself cleaned up, and go in and help with finishing up dinner? Or do I put more onions on the ground? I think I probably need to go in and help with dinner. So I'm gonna water these onions in. The garden is starting to shape up. Cabbage looks good, broccoli looks good. I can't see what I'm pointing to because the sun is so bright, but I think that looks good as well. I do want to show you one thing. The plants have handled getting transplanted pretty well, but the outer leaves have gotten a little bit sunburned. I'll show you what that looks like. I think sometimes that's inevitable because those are the ones that have fully grown inside under grow lights. And also when the plants are in a tray, those leaves are kind of held up a little bit so they don't get as much direct light. Transplant them out with more space, they lay a little flatter, they get more sunlight, and they've gotten a little bit burnt. So let's take like this guy right here, this yellowing here. That is sunburn, but like the rest of these leaves, the inner leaves look good. So ultimately, this isn't real happy. The main part of the plant's doing well. And then like here, this broccoli plant, like this leaf isn't very happy, but all the rest of the leaves look just fine. So you win some, you lose some. There is no perfection in gardening. we have to give ourselves grace. Real food comes dirty. One of my favorite t-shirts from Roots and Refuge. So, dirty hands, happy heart. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you soon.